Hey guys, welcome again to Your English Manual. This is the second chapter of our Common Mistakes series. In the last chapter, we talked about the difference between the subject and the object. Now we are going to talk about what a clause is.
Oh, again? Come on, this topic is so boring. Why do I need to know this? How is this going to help me learn English? Believe me, it will help you to understand a little more complicated things in the future. You can trust us. This is a very important base. Anyways, shall we?
This can be a very complicated topic, so we are not going to focus so much on specific details. Understanding the basic will already help us a lot. So, in a simple way, a clause is a group of words that needs to have at least a subject and a verb. If you watched our previous video, you know what a subject is, so we are not going to focus on this part. Now, the second important aspect of this definition is that every clause needs to have a verb. If it doesn't have a verb, it isn't a clause. For example, if I say nice or me too, these aren't clauses.
Now, there are two general kinds of clauses. The first kind is the clause that expresses a complete thought. In other words, it can stand alone as a sentence. Someone may say this clause by itself, and the person who's listening will understand. Since it doesn't need anything else to make sense, it's called independent clause, because it's independent.
For example, if I say just I like, here we have the subject I and the verb like. So we have a clause, but it doesn't express a complete thought. Anyone who hears I like will immediately think, I like what? Can you see that there is something missing in order to complete the thought?
That is, these two words alone are not capable of conveying a clear thought. However, if I say I like dogs, the thought is now complete, because the person understands everything I meant. So, this is an independent clause.
The other kind of clause is the one that doesn't express a complete thought. It still has a subject and a verb, but it doesn't convey a complete thought by itself, just like the example we gave, I like.
Another example, because I like dogs. If I say just this, because I like dogs, can you understand what I meant? No, right? We need something before this so we can understand why we have this because.
Yes, and since this kind of clause depends on something to have a complete thought, it is called dependent clause.
So you may ask, oh, do I need to know these names? No, but understanding these concepts will help you a lot, you see. Well, so now you guys who already saw our previous video may ask, wait, so if I say I like, it doesn't convey a complete thought, but if I say I like dogs, it does. So all I have to do is put a direct object after the verb to give it a complete thought, right?
Actually, not necessarily. In fact, objects usually add more sense to the clauses. After all, you are adding more details, more information, but they won't always be necessary or even appear.
For example, if I say I work, do you feel like something is missing for the sentence to make sense? No. You can understand I work, just this. I may even say where, when, but those would be extra information. The sentence I work on its own conveys a complete thought. This happens because the verb to work doesn't need a complement to make sense. The verb to like, on the other hand, does. Therefore, the verb you are using is important.
Then you may say, oh, come on, now I have to pay attention to that too? No, you don't. This is something that we naturally already know how to do. We're just giving you this information because it is important to understand how things work, okay?
Another thing, there are certain types of verbs that are not followed by a direct object. Their complement is a little different. We're not going into details here, but the biggest example of that is the verb to be. It usually gives characteristics to the subject. For example, if I say, I am a teacher, we have the subject I, the verb am, and the complement a teacher, which is a characteristic of the subject I. And this is also a clause, since it has a subject and a verb. This example is even an independent clause, since besides that, it also conveys a complete thought. If I say, I am a teacher, everybody understands what I meant.
In summary, a clause will always have at least a subject and a verb. However, depending on what comes after the verb, it may express a complete thought, independent clause, or not, dependent clause. Okay? There is one thing that we'll see a little further, but it's important to warn you right here. In English, every clause has a subject, right? But turns out that there is a case that may seem like an exception to the rule, but it isn't. If I am with other people and say, for example, look, or if I am with someone and say, help me, or even try this, where is the subject? In the first, we have only the verb to look. In the second, we have the verb to help and the direct object, me. In the third, we have the verb to try and the direct object, this. And now what? Well, this case is the one called imperative. It is used to make a polite request. For example, try this, or to give orders. For example, look, or help me. In this case, the subject exists, but it is hidden. In the examples we gave, it is like we were saying, you, look, you, help me, or even you, try this.
Therefore, technically, there is a subject, so it still fits in the same rule. We have a subject and a verb. That's why these examples are clauses. The imperative is the only case in which the subject can be hidden. In all other cases, the subject needs to be in its place, okay? As you guys will see in our videos further down the road, understanding what a clause is will be very helpful. One of the reasons behind this is to know that two or more clauses may be connected by certain words, but this doesn't change the fact that they are separate clauses. For example, I can say, I don't like sushi, but I like pizza. Please notice that we have two different clauses there. The first one is, I don't like sushi. The verb is to like. The subject is I, and it expresses a complete thought. And the second one is, I like pizza. The verb is to like, the subject is I, and it expresses a complete thought. These two clauses are connected by the word but.
The two clauses work isolated, so they can even have different verbs. For example, you have a car and you drive well. We have two clauses. The first one is, you have a car. The verb is to have. The subject, you, and it expresses a complete thought. And the second one is, you drive well. The verb is to drive, the subject, you, and it expresses a complete thought. These two clauses are connected by the word and.
They can even have different subjects. You want coffee, but I prefer juice. The first clause is, you want coffee. The verb, to want, the subject is you, and with a complete thought. And the second clause is, I prefer juice. the verb to prefer, the subject I with a complete thought.
But what matters in the end is that in those three examples we have two different clauses, so the rules of one won't influence the rules of the other. They work isolated, and this will be very important to understand things in the future, okay?
To finish, did you guys solve today's challenge? We have the sentence, just do it. So, are we talking about a clause or not? And the answer is yes. This is an example of a sentence in the imperative. In other words, when we tell someone to do something or when we ask someone something. In this case, even though the subject doesn't appear, it's there, hidden. It's like we were saying, you, just do it. So the subject is you. Since we have a verb, which is do, and we have a subject, which is you, we do have a clause. Well, so that's it, guys. As we said at the beginning, this video is just a base to understand what's coming in the future. You'll see that certain topics will be much clearer now that you guys watch these two videos. You can be sure of it.
Anyways, we hope that you guys liked the video and learned a lot. To make sure you understand well, we recommend you practice a lot not to make any mistakes, okay?
To help, we put a list of exercises in the description of this video. If you liked it, please leave a like and share this video. Let's help as many people as possible to learn this. See you next time.
See ya!